It's your personality, EA. It's your tour guide, EA. It's whatever you want to call me, but call me EA. Let's roll. Are you kidding me? Analyze this. I got the pleasure to sit down with Mr. Andrew Swanson, Program Manager for Oregon Recovers.
Happy to be here.
Thank you, sir. So we was talking before we started talking, and I just want to let my fans know a little bit about you. You know, introduce yourself, tell them about what you do and who you are.
Sure. I'm the program manager at Oregon Recovers, which basically means I'm in charge of all the events and community building stuff that we do as an organization. Me personally, I grew up in San Diego. I'm in recovery from addiction to IV heroin and meth.
Wow.
And alcohol.
Wow.
Yeah, my disease took me to Skid Row in LA, where I was shooting dope all day and, you know, countless ODs and robbing cars and all that fun stuff.
You?
Yeah.
You don't look like it. You definitely bounce back. What they call bounce back. You know what I'm saying? But you consider yourself still to be in recovery.
Yeah. I'll have 3 years in November, God willing. So.
That's a blessing.
Yeah, it is. It's you know, my life is entirely different. Like if you were ever going to tell me 3.5 years ago that I would be sitting in Portland, Oregon, of all places, working, you know, on behalf of the recovery community to expand access to resources like addiction treatment and recovery support services, I certainly would not have believed you.
Right.
I had no interest in doing advocacy work. I didn't really know what that meant, right? and I certainly wasn't thinking about anything, you know, in any larger community beyond myself and just copping dope that day. So. I'm really lucky to be alive and really blessed to be up here doing this work now.
You're a blessing to the community, like Oregon Recovers. Tell us a little bit more about Oregon Recovers and their purpose.
Yeah, so Oregon Recovers is a statewide coalition of people in recovery, friends and family members of folks in recovery or suffering from the disease of addiction. Because let's be honest, right? Like my parents are just as much in recovery from my disease as I am.
Wow.
Because I put them through hell too.
That's a good way to say it.
Yeah. So we really are intentional about bringing family members, you know, moms that have lost kids, but then also brothers and sisters of folks in recovery or out there using as part of this coalition. And then the third part of the coalition is the workforce. So, you know, the people that are working tirelessly on the front lines of the addiction crisis that are overworked and underpaid every single day.
Overworked and underpaid?
Yeah.
That's my specialty. That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
That's big.
That's the coalition. And we've kind of united everybody together in the state in order to build a political constituency that transforms the way that Oregon addresses the addiction crisis. Our mission statement is, you know, we've brought the coalition together to transform Oregon's fractured and incomplete addiction recovery system into a recovery-oriented continuum of care that recognizes addiction as a chronic disease. And that's a mouthful. But it's important to point out that we say fractured and incomplete because there's a lot of great work being done throughout the state, you know, but it's very much siloed. It's very much you know, people are on their own little islands working their asses off to get all, you know, to get the services.
Which is not helpful. It's not helpful. We all need to be on one page.
We do. We need to build a real system of care across the state that includes private payers, includes the private insurers, but then also includes OHP, you know, and ultimately we want to ensure that every Oregonian has access to on-demand rapid treatment and then the follow-up recovery support services. We also want to make sure that our prevention program as a state is well-funded, you know, and then finally, as we deconstruct the criminal justice and intervention paradigm, like the diversion programs and the drug courts, what are we going to do to replace that? We have to create a new intervention paradigm in schools, primary care, you know, offices and hospitals, emergency departments. So that's a lot of the work that we've been doing on the ground is number one, educating folks in all these different, you know, siloed systems about you know, how we can better address addiction, but then also bringing them all to the table collectively so we can build consensus on a solution.
To the table collectively, that's huge. How long you been doing this work?
Oregon Recovers was started 2 years ago next week, actually. So we started, thank you.
Have you been here the whole time?
No, I started about 6 months after the kickoff rally.
Okay.
We started off with a kickoff rally in Szymanski Park in the South Park blocks of Portland, and over 1,000 people turned out. And we asked, I wasn't there yet, but they asked everybody to bring a shoe representing someone that they've lost to addiction.
Oh, man.
And they brought mostly, you know, those people's shoes, right? Brought them and then put them in a pile in front of the podium, and we had a bunch of elected officials and some people from the recovery community speak, you know, to talk about this crisis. Right now, Oregon ranks 50th in access to treatment.
50th.
However, we have the 4th highest addiction rate in the country. So we're going to
How
lose.
could that be?
We're going to lose.
50th and the fourth highest.
Yeah, we're going to lose 2 to 3 people a day from drug overdoses in the next year, and we're going to lose 5 people a day to alcohol-related deaths, which is astounding.
Where do you get your statistics from?
Those both come from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, the federal.
Okay.
Yeah, so they rank each state in terms of access, people needing but not receiving treatment, and then the untreated addiction rate for each state.
So who are some of the organizations you guys are partnered with and working with?
So we partnered, first thing we did is we reached out to the low-hanging fruit. We reached out to all those workforce, organizations, the Central City Concerns,
Right.
the DePaul Treatments, the Addictions Recovery Center in Medford. Throughout the state, we try and reach those folks that are doing great work. And recognizing that they need more funding and they need more support from the state, or in the case of the private ones, they need better reimbursements, from private insurers. So we started to bring those workforce people together, and then at the same time, we've just been plugging away at tapping the recovery community.
Man,
Most everybody who works at Oregon Recovers is in recovery from
Yes.
addiction, and so we all have our own networks within the recovery community, and really we work tirelessly to try and bring everybody out, from the 12-step programs, from refuge recovery, from Well-Brighty to Native American Pathway to Recovery, get them all into the room and get them all engaged.
So you gotta have passion. As we both know, the field is not heavily money related. You gotta have a passion to be here.
Yeah.
So
It's the state underfunds addiction services. There's no question about that.
Yes.
And that's not unique to Oregon. This is a problem across the country. But ultimately, what's happened is up until the opioid crisis really made headlines. We had cottage industries around the country that were the only ones doing anything about addiction. So you have these mom and pop treatment providers that have been basically carrying the weight for the whole state up until maybe 10 years ago, and now for the first time we're as a state recognizing that this is a chronic disease and it needs medical attention.
Medical attention.
Exactly.
Okay.
The mom and pop cottage industries and some of the faith-based organizations that are doing fantastic work
Right.
Have been carrying the burden for a public health crisis, right? And that has to change. So
A lot of it's underfunded.
It is, and not to say that there aren't ways to fix that, right? Another interesting statistic is Oregon has the lowest effective beer tax in the United States. So if you count our lack of a sales tax, the beer distributors in Oregon are doing quite well, and that there's been some attempts in the past to raise the price of beer in Oregon to pay for some of these services, but the problem 14 years ago when they tried this last time was there was no consensus from all the players around Oregon in terms of how the money would be spent. So a lot of what we're doing is coming up with a strategic plan that has consensus behind it from all the big players, from all the service providers, all the workforce people, in order to then, after we come up with that cohesive plan that everybody agrees on, or most people agree on, then we can go after the money.
So going after the money is last.
Yep.
It's changing the policies.
Yep.
Getting in there and actually building the right relationships and trying to get on the same page, and then you go after the money.
Exactly.
Okay.
What happened the 14 years ago is because ultimately this is a campaign that's going to pitch us against the beer distributors, the Anheuser-Busch's, the outside money, and what they were able to do is, once all those service providers started infighting over where the money would be spent and how it would be spent, they capitalized on that.
That's what they do.
Yeah, and they got legislators to say no way.
I know you're a nonprofit, so how do you guys generate your money?
So great question. We are a tiny nonprofit, and we're actually we have a fiscal sponsor called the Oregon Public Health Institute, and one of the reasons we do that is because they have such a larger budget than we do. It allows us more time spent in Salem, advocating on behalf of the recovery community. Nonprofits are only allowed to spend 20% of their resources, I think, in lobbying work. But because we have this big fiscal sponsor, 20% of theirs, that would be more time than we could ever spend in Salem anyway. But ultimately, we're funded by event sponsorship and donations. So we do. Last year, we did a huge fundraising event called the Walk for Recovery. It was the single largest addiction recovery event in Oregon. And we aimed at bringing 500 people out to downtown Portland to walk, in support of addiction recovery. We ended up turning over 800 people out, and we shot for raising $60,000, and we raised $133,000.
Man,
yeah, and I'd like to point out that like over $40,000 of that was individual donors. $5 and $10 donations from Facebook, because everybody's just
they really want this to happen.
They do. There's been an incredible groundswell of support for what we're doing from all over the state. So in light of that success that we had last year, we decided that this year we're going to launch 4 Walk for Recovery events around the state.
So 4, like quarterly, or just
September is National Recovery Month.
Okay.
So we're doing them all in September on different weekends. And the idea is we wanted a walk in the 4 largest media markets in Portland.
Okay.
And this parallels some other advocacy work we're doing down there. We're training local advocates to pass county and city resolutions declaring addiction a public health crisis in their community, and really building like that sustained leadership, recovery community leadership that will be there long after
we're gone.
Yeah, exactly. To continue to push this movement forward. And so the idea is once those resolutions are passed, we can take those and kind of spotlight them at the Walk for Recovery events and celebrate the passing of the resolutions by having elected officials read the proclamations.
So what does the Walk for Recovery actually consist of? What do you guys all do?
So each walk, basically people roll in, they check in, they get their walk shirts. And you can register online ahead of time at www.walk4recovery.org.
Okay.
And so you go and you check in, you get your walk shirt, and go check out all the tables. All the service providers and local stakeholders are tabling at these events, and there will be music and just like a good time. And then we're going to have about a 45-minute rally where we have some local folks from those respective recovery communities tell their stories, talk about why the movement is important to them.
Very important.
Yeah, and then the elected official is going to read the proclamation, and then some of our steering committee members, Oregon Recovery Steering Committee members, are going to just speak on behalf of the organization.
So who's all on the steering committee?
So our steering committee is growing, as we are as an organization, and right now we have Lakeisha Dumas from Multnomah County.
I know her.
Yeah. Keisha's been a tireless advocate for the work we're doing from day one. She's been on our steering committee since the beginning. And then Siadam Edmo, who is the director of MRG Foundation, is also on our steering committee. Eric Martin from MACBO.
Eric Martin,
yep.
Still at it again.
Still at it.
His name is everywhere. He's doing a lot of good work for this community.
He really is.
Yeah.
And then Devarshi Bajpai, who works for Care Oregon, used to work at Multnomah County. Lori Paris, who is the director of Addictions Recovery Center in Medford. Okay. And Terry Morgan, who is the director of the Springfield Treatment Center Methadone Clinic in Eugene.
You guys got a lot of teammates.
Yeah. And then Tony Vesna and Siadam. Tony Vesna is the director of Fourth Dimension Recovery Center, and Siadam Edmo are the 2 co-chairs.
Wow.
Oh, excuse me, Andrew Rowe from AllMed.
Andrew Rowe.
He's a new addition.
What about the organization, like in staff right here?
In staff, we have 3 full-time folks, including our director, Mike Marshall.
Okay.
So myself, Mike Marshall, and Raylene McMillan is our movement building director, and she's doing that resolution campaign throughout the state.
Okay, so is there any people of color in the organization?
So, good question. Our Sarah Miller is one of our part-time associates, and she's from the Klamath tribe. And then Siadam Edmo is also from, I'm not sure which tribe she's a member of, but I know she's a very active member of the Native American community in Oregon. And then Keisha is African American. But in terms of our full-time staff, we do not have any African American people on right now. And that is, it's a challenge.
Change that.
Absolutely. We're always looking to change that.
What do you need to qualify in order to?
Well, I mean, everybody that we've hired is part of the recovery community as we define it. So somebody that has either friends or family member in recovery or suffering from addiction, or is in recovery themselves. And that's really important because, we want somebody that's really passionate about the work we're doing.
Right, because it's not a money thing.
It's definitely not.
It's not a paid position.
And our 2 associate positions, our 2 part-time positions, rotate every 6 months. Okay. And that's kind of we created that intentionally because it's a great springboard opportunity. You're working with a lot of, leadership from around the state at a lot of big organizations, and, it's a great networking opportunity. And it's a really good skill building opportunity because, you're doing policy work, you're doing event work, you're down in Salem, you're working with legislators.
When you got passion, this is a great way like build your recovery as well?
Oh, absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned that. I can tell you for sure, and I know that Mike Marshall, my boss, says the same thing all the time. Is, you know, the work I'm doing, this work to really build a movement has made my recovery so much stronger than it ever was. It's a huge honor to be able to do this, and you know, advocacy as a form of recovery is definitely a real thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So is the boss active recovery too?
He is. Wow.
The first night I was in treatment was the first time that I publicly raised my hand and said, I'm an alcoholic. And for most people that would be rock bottom. And I look at it now and I realized I'd hit rock bottom the day before. I was on my way back up.
I think he's got about 12 years
That's good.
from addiction to alcohol and meth. Yeah.
That's good to see there's life after addiction.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There is, and that's like something, it's a big part of the narrative we're trying to change with the media. We intentionally focus these 4 walks on the 4 largest media markets because it's an opportunity to really push against that stigma of addiction. I'm sure like when you see a news broadcast news bit on addiction, they're always showing the guy with the shopping cart on the street corner, right?
Yeah.
Or the guy sitting out in front of Central City Concern.
Yeah.
And we're trying to change that to demonstrate that we do recover from addiction, and provided the right resources, this is a treatable disease and people recover.
Absolutely. So when you say treatable disease, what do you feel is actual acceptable treatment? Like could an alcoholic use marijuana and still be considered in recovery?
That's a great question. So as an organization, our definition of being in recovery, our definition of recovery is, somebody who identifies that they have a problem or adverse consequences due to, drugs or alcohol, and then takes active steps to mitigate those consequences. Active steps to mitigate that,
Yes.
and then is living, a productive and happy life because of that. We do not believe that abstinence-based recovery is the only recovery.
Right.
And I think that's really important. And that was a major shift in my thinking. When I came in here, I was a 12-step guy. I still am. I was very much only aware of abstinence-based recovery, and I didn't quite understand that there is a vibrant recovery community out there that is in recovery from a substance, but still, chooses to safely use other substances, responsibly.
That's true.
It is true. It is absolutely true. And to keep them out of the broader recovery community because of that, or stigmatize them within the rooms of 12-step community, is super dangerous. And so it's really changed my thinking about it, and I've come to recognize and celebrate a lot of people's pathways to recovery.
What would you say is your 5-year goal for the organization?
Our 5-year goal for the organization is so this might be a little wonky. I'm going to get into the weeds here, but we've been working with the Alcohol and Drug Policy Commission, which is a governor-appointed commission, and we've made a lot of progress with them. We got a House bill passed that set deadlines for them. We got them to we got the governor to appoint a new executive director there, and they've been tasked with coming up with a statewide strategic plan for addiction, and we've been working very closely with them along the way. We also, that commission was largely made up of judges and attorneys and DAs and sheriffs and so forth.
Wow. All the wrong people.
Well, yeah. I mean, they need a seat at the table, but they shouldn't be the whole table, right? So this is a public health crisis, and we need public health people.
You need everybody at the table. For sure.
And so we got more addiction medicine people and public health people appointed to the commission, and in fact, we got a bill passed this last session that actually requires that they public health and addiction doctors make up a larger percentage of the overall commission. But anyway, the strategic plan will be released in December, and it will go to the legislature, and then that's when we start talking about how do we pay for it. We're going to break up the strategic plan into a series of bills that will be, introduced in this coming legislative session, the following legislative session, and then we'll see if it requires a third or not. But ultimately, the idea is to get it passed in pieces. So we have the strategic plan is broken down into 5 sections. There's prevention, intervention,
huge.
Engagement, prevention. So the prevention work that the counties do, and then and schools and so on. Intervention, engagement, and this is really an important one because as we deconstruct the criminal justice paradigm, the drug courts and the diversion programs, we absolutely have to create a new one in primary care in the hospitals.
Yes.
And then treatment on demand, recovery support services, and finally revenue. So revenue and funding streams.
I
So
love how you said revenue last.
right,
Yeah,
right. Well,
yeah.
we have to build consensus around the plan. We have to we need all the important players and stakeholders to agree on the path forward before we try and fund it, because otherwise it's going to divide us, right?
Yes.
So the idea is we'll break it up into bills that address those issues, and then at the end we're gonna go after some revenue to pay for all these services.
Man, I love it here. I can talk to you forever, man, 'cause you're right in the field that I'm in. Like, I'm an addiction counselor. Part of the reason why I got in this field is to fight the injustices of it.
Well,
You know what I mean?
the reason we exist and the reason that we've been successful to date is because of you and people like you, working on the front lines. I can't tell you that we have a tiny staff, and the reason that we have a statewide reach and we're doing all this cool stuff everywhere, it's not because of me and my two colleagues here in the office. It's because of the tireless work, in our planning committees and our volunteers around the state that are finishing up their, 8 or 10 hour shifts at a hospital or at a treatment center, and then they're sitting on a call for 3 hours with me, planning all these great events, and pushing this forward. That is Oregon Recovers.
Somebody want to get involved with you. How could they get involved?
So,
How could they follow you?
Yeah, so number one, go to our website, OregonRecovers.org. You can find us on Facebook and follow us there. That's the best way to keep up to date on
The
what's
best
going
way.
on. Yep, that is the quickest, and reach out. All of our email addresses are on our website. You can reach out to me personally. I love to talk to people, within the community and get you involved.
Yeah. Final words for my fans.
Thank you so much for allowing me to do this. We do recover, and let's build power and create a movement here in Oregon.
Join the recovery revolution!
So without further the culture, analyze this, people. I need you to be actively engaged in the dialogue. Suffering from addiction, you got injustices, you need tips? Analyze this topic. Until next time, take care of yourself and each other. Let's go.